Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mishnapad, Paramahansa, Paradikacharya, Ashtotar, that is Srimad, Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Mishnapad, Paramahansa, Paradikacharya, Ashtotar, that is Srimad, Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktabinda ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sorry, before we begin, is this too loud or not loud enough, or is it just right? It could go up. I'm having a problem with my ears. I'm sorry, I have a little thing stuff in there. So if you need to turn it up, turn it up. You know how to do it? No one knows how to do it. Should it be louder or not? It's good. It's okay. Yeah. All right. I'll speak louder. Okay. So, as far as I remember, we're on text 15. You don't remember? I'm pretty sure we didn't do text 15. I would remember. All right. On this 10th day of October, 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 7 entitled Knowledge of the Absolute. Text number 15 on page 320. One book is different, but I don't think it's out there. Okay. Namam Duskritino Mudha Papadyante Naradamaha Maya Parita Jnana Asuram Bhavam Ashitaha Namam Duskritino Mudha Papadyante Naradamaha Maya Parita Jnana Asuram Bhavamashitaha Namam Duskritino Mudha Papadyante Naradamaha Maya Parita Jnana Asuram Bhavamashitaha Namam Duskritino Mudha Papadyante Naradamaha Maya Parita Jnana Asuram Bhavamashitaha. Dhammaraj, you want to try? Namam Duskritino Mudha Papadyante Naradamaha Maya Parita Jnana Asuram Bhavamashitaha. Bhavan. Namam Duskritino Mudha Papadyante Naradama Maya Parita Jnana Asuram Bhavamashita. Anyone else want to try? Namam Duskritino Mudha Papadyante Naradama Maya Parita Jnana Asuram Bhavamashitaha. All right, I'll read the synonyms. Na, not, mam, unto me, duskritina, miscreants, mudha, foolish, papadyante, surrender, nara, adamaha, lowest among mankind, mayaya, by the illusory energy, aparita, stolen, jnanaha, whose knowledge, asuram, demonic, bhavam, nature, ashitaha, accepting. Translation: those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. Purport. It is said in the Bhagavad Gita that simply by surrendering oneself unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Krishna, one can surmount the stringent laws of material nature. At this point, a question arises. How is it that educated philosophers, scientists, businessmen, administrators, and all the leaders of ordinary men do not surrender to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, the all-powerful personality of Godhead? Mukti, or liberation from the laws of material nature, is sought by the leaders of mankind in different ways and with great plans and perseverance for a great many years and births. But if that liberation is possible by simply surrendering unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then why don't these intelligent and hard-working leaders adopt this simple method? The Gita answers this question very frankly. Those really learned leaders of society like Brahma, Shiva, Kapila, the Kumaras, Manu, Vyas, Devala, Asita, Janaka, Prahlad, Bali, and later on Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Sri Chaitanya, and many others, who are faithful philosophers, politicians, educators, scientists, etc., surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Person, the all-powerful authority. Those who are not actually philosophers, scientists, educators, administrators, etc., but who pose themselves as such for material gain, do not accept the plan or path of the Supreme Lord. They have no idea of God. They simply manufacture their own worldly